Let me be brutally honest with you right now, because nobody else in your life is going to say this to your face. You are losing money, not because the market crashed, not because your boss is underpaying you, not because of inflation or the economy or whatever excuse is trending on Twitter this week. You are losing money because of four specific, invisible, completely preventable things that are happening inside your financial life right now, this week, this month, this year. And the reason they are destroying you is not because they are complicated. It is because they feel completely normal. They feel reasonable. They feel like just the way life works. And that feeling, that comfortable, unchallenged assumption is costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of your lifetime. I have watched people work 30 years and retire with almost nothing. Not because they were lazy, not because they were unlucky, but because nobody ever sat them down and told them the truth. I am going to tell you the truth right now. If you are watching this and you are serious about your financial life, hit subscribe before this video is over. The information I am giving you in this channel is the kind of advice that financial advisors charge thousands of dollars per session to deliver, and you are getting it completely free. Every week I put out content that is designed to do one thing: close the gap between where you are and where you should be. Subscribe now. Do not wait until the end. The people who subscribe early are the ones who show up early to opportunities, and showing up early is half the game. The first hidden drain on your wealth is something most financial commentators call lifestyle inflation. But I want to go deeper than the surface level definition, because if I just say you make more, you spend more, you are going to nod your head, say, yeah, I know, and keep doing exactly what you've been doing. So let's get into the psychology of it, because that is where the real damage lives. When your income goes up, something happens in your brain that feels entirely justified. There's a quiet internal voice that says you have earned this. You worked the late nights, you took the meetings nobody else wanted, you delivered results, and now you deserve to live like it. And here is the brutal truth. That voice is not wrong about the first part. You did work hard. The problem is that voice is making a financial decision while wearing an emotional disguise, and it is costing you everything. Think about a guy named Daniel. Daniel is 32 years old, working hard, gets a promotion, and his salary jumps from $60,000 a year to $80,000, $20,000 raise. He earned it. Nobody is disputing that. But watch what happens in the 18 months after that raise lands. The apartment becomes a house with a mortgage, $200 a month higher. The used Honda becomes a leased BMW with a payment of $550 a month. The vacations get a little longer, a little nicer, maybe $400 more per trip. The restaurants go up a tier. The wardrobe gets refreshed. The gym membership upgrades. None of it feels extravagant. Every single decision taken individually makes complete sense. He can afford it now. That is the entire point of earning more money, right? Wrong. Here's the math that Daniel never ran. And here's the math that is probably destroying you right now too. That $20,000 raise after federal taxes, state taxes, and payroll deductions becomes somewhere between $13,000 and $16,000 in actual additional take-home pay depending on a state. Let's be generous and say $16,000. That is an extra $1,333 a month in his pocket. Sounds meaningful. Now look at what the lifestyle expansion actually cost him. The house upgrade is $200 a month. The BMW lease is $550 more than his old car payment. The vacations and dining and wardrobe and subscriptions add up to another $400 a month conservatively. That is $1,150 a month in new recurring expenses out of an additional $1,300. He is left with $183 a month of that entire $20,000 raise, $183. And that assumes he was disciplined, which most people are not. By the time Daniel's 38, 6 years into peak earning, peak energy, peak career momentum, his net worth is barely moved. He worked harder, and the gap between his income and his wealth stayed razor thin because the lifestyle chased every single dollar he earned. Now, here's what I want you to understand. The fix is not deprivation. I am not telling you to eat rice and beans and drive a 1997 Camry for the rest of your life. That approach fails because it is not sustainable and it treats wealth building like punishment. And the fix is sequencing when your income rises before the lifestyle expands, before the new car, before the nicer apartment. You give your future self a raise first. You increase your savings and investment rate by at minimum 2 to 3% of your new income. That increment, protected and compounded, does something over 30 years that no raise can ever match. It multiplies, and the lifestyle enjoyment you delay by 90 days, while you set that system up, is barely noticeable. The compounding that results from it is not. The second hidden drain is harder to talk about because it hits something emotional, and most people do not like being told their emotions are costing them money, but they are. The force I'm talking about is loss aversion, and the financial consequences of it are catastrophic in ways that almost nobody fully understands until it is too late. Here's the concept in one sentence. Human beings are psychologically wired to feel the pain of losing something roughly twice as intensely as they feel the pleasure of gaining the same thing. Losing $100 feels about twice as bad as gaining $100 feels. Good. Psychologists discovered this decades ago. The financial industry profits from it every single day, and if you do not understand it and actively counteract it, it will quietly rob you of more money than almost any other force. And this list here is what it looks like in real life. Markets go down, they always go down at some point. That is not a bug in the system, it is a feature. Corrections happen, recessions happen, headlines appear that sound like the world is genuinely ending, and people panic. Not all people, but enough people consistently across every single market cycle in modern financial history that it has become one of the most predictable and expensive patterns in investing. Fear spikes, money moves out of the market, people feel temporarily safe, and they pay for that safety with a price that does not show up on any statement. Consider a woman named Margaret. Margaret has been investing since her mid-30s. She is disciplined. She contributes to her retirement account every single month for 15 years. She is doing everything right. Then 2008 hit, the market drops 40% in a matter of months. The news is relentless. Banks are failing, unemployment is spiking, and Margaret, watching her account value fall month after month, makes the decision that feels completely rational in that moment. She moves everything to cash. She stops the bleeding. She saves herself, except she does not save herself. She destroys herself financially, and she does not go back in during 2009 when the recovery begins because the news still sounds bad. She does not go back in during 2010 because it feels too soon, and she does not want to get burned again. She does not go back in during 2011 because there is another dip, and she is convinced it is all about to collapse again. By the time she finally feels safe enough to reinvest, she has missed one of the most powerful market recoveries in the history of modern finance. The money she moved to cash is worth roughly what it was when she moved it. The money she would have had she simply stayed put, is worth more than double. She did not lose money in the crash. She lost it in the recovery she was too afraid to participate in. This is not a story about being reckless. It is not a story about ignoring danger. It is a story about understanding what risk actually means over a long time horizon. Because here's the truth about risk that most people have completely backwards. Over any 30-year window in the history of the American stock market, the most dangerous thing you could have done was not stay invested through volatility. The most dangerous thing was to exit every single market crisis in history. The Great Depression, the 1970s, stagflation, Black Monday, the dot-com crash, the 2008 financial crisis, the 2020 pandemic crash. Every single one of them was followed by a recovery. Every one. The market has a perfect track record of recovering, and the investors who captured that recovery were the ones who stayed. The ones who lost were the ones who let a headline make a 30-year decision. So when the market drops and your stomach turns and that voice in your head says, "Get out," what you need to say back to it is this. This is exactly the moment I decided in advance I would not run, because the investors who outperform over long periods are almost never the ones who predicted the crash. They are almost always the ones who had a written, pre-committed plan that stopped them from making an emotionally driven exit at exactly the wrong moment. The third hidden drain is the one that surprises people most, because when I first say the word, they mentally check out, thinking it doesn't apply to them. The word is fees, not the fee you paid once at a closing or the annual fee on a credit card you meant to cancel. I mean the systematic, invisible, mathematically devastating drag of investment fees that most Americans are paying every single year without the slightest understanding of what those fees are actually costing them over time. Let me put a number on this, because vague warnings do not change behavior. Specific numbers do. You have $100,000 invested. 2 funds are available to you. Fund A charges you 1% per year in fees, which is expressed as an expense ratio of 1.0. Fund B charges you 0.1%, expressed as 0.11% versus 0.1%. Most people look at that difference and think, well, that's almost nothing. What's the big deal? Here's the big deal. Over 30 years, assuming identical market returns, the difference in your ending account balance between those 2 funds is not 1%. It is not even 10%. Because of the compounding effect of fees dragging on your returns year after year after year, the difference in your final balance can exceed $70,000 on that original $100,000 investment. You did not spend that $70,000 on something you enjoyed. You did not lose it in a bad stock pick. You paid it in fees automatically, invisibly, one small percentage point at a time, to a fund manager who in most cases did not even beat the market anyway. And that is the part that makes this genuinely enraging. If you understand it clearly, the funds with the highest fees are not, as a group, the best performing funds. Decades of academic research, study after study, confirm the same finding repeatedly. The majority of actively managed funds, the ones charging you 1.5%, even 2% annually for the privilege of professional stock selection, underperform simple index funds over the long run. Not every year, not in every fund, but consistently over long time horizons. The data is brutal, and it does not lie. So why does this keep happening? Why do millions of people sit in high-fee funds right now? Because the fees are expressed as small-sounding percentages that nobody feels leaving their account. Nobody sits across from you and says, I'm going to take $70,000 from you over the next 30 years. It just happens quietly, automatically, invisibly, 0.1% at a time. Knowing this does not mean you need to restructure your entire financial life this weekend. But it does mean you owe yourself one afternoon, literally one afternoon, to open your investment accounts, find the expense ratios on every fund you own, and calculate what you are actually paying. If you are in a fund with an expense ratio above 0.5% and it is not consistently, provably, historically outperforming its benchmark, you need to ask yourself a very direct question. What am I paying for? Because that one afternoon of work could be worth more to your long-term financial outcome than 6 months of cutting back on every discretionary expense in your life combined. The math is not complicated. The willingness to face it is the only thing standing between you and keeping your own money. Now we get to the 4th hidden drain, and this is the most personal one, the one most people will be most defensive about, and the one that is therefore probably doing the most damage in your life right now. It is the story you are telling yourself about money. Every single person carries a financial narrative, a set of deeply embedded beliefs about money, about what is possible for someone like them, about whether the system is rigged, about whether they are the kind of person who builds wealth or the kind of person who just gets by. These narratives were not formed in a finance class. They were formed in the kitchen of the house you grew up, and they were formed by the way money was talked about, or whispered about, or screamed about, or never mentioned at all in the home, where your beliefs about the world took shape. and they are running in the background of every financial decision you make today, whether you know it or not. Some people carry the narrative that wealth is for other people, that the game is rigged, that no matter how hard they work or how smart they are, they will end up exactly where they started because the system does not work for people like them. I understand where that belief comes from. I am not dismissing it entirely, but I am telling you directly that when that belief lives in your head unchallenged, it creates a quiet, constant disengagement from the decisions that actually determine your outcome. Why would you optimize a retirement account if the system is against you? Why would you study expense ratios or automate your savings if none of it works anyway? The belief protects you from disappointment, and it also guarantees it. Then there is a second group carrying the opposite narrative. They believe that money will fix everything, that one big moment, one great investment, one windfall, one perfect opportunity is going to transform their entire financial picture. And so they wait. They hold out for something dramatic, something big enough to matter, something worthy of their full attention and effort. And in the waiting, they miss the quiet, patient, deeply unsexy work that actually builds wealth. Not one big swing. Thousands of small, consistent, automated, boring decisions made over decades. And then there is the third group, and this is probably the largest group of all. These are the people who simply avoid thinking about money, not because they are irresponsible, not because they do not care, but because financial uncertainty is genuinely uncomfortable. And the most natural human response to discomfort is to look away from it. So the retirement account statement comes in the mail and goes unopened. The fee structure in the 401 kilobits sits unexamined for years. The financial plan that needs to be built stays unbuilt. And the months pass, and then the years pass, and the compounding that should have been working for them has been working against them. Instead, I need you to hear this clearly. Avoidance is not neutral. Every single month that passes without a basic financial structure in place is a month of compounding that happens to someone else's account and not yours. I do not say that to shame you. Shame has never built a single savings account in the history of the world. I say it because the most powerful financial move available to most people right now has nothing to do with picking the right stock, timing the market, or finding the next big opportunity. It has to do with engagement, with showing up for your own financial life, with opening the statement, reading the numbers, and deciding to respond to what you find rather than continuing to pretend it is not there. So here's the part where most financial content tells you to believe in yourself and take it one day at a time, and then you feel inspired for 20 minutes and nothing changes. I am not doing that. I am going to tell you exactly what the mechanical system looks like that actually produces results, because inspiration without structure is just entertainment. The first piece of the system is automation, and it is non-negotiable. You do not save what is left over after you spend. You spend what is left over after you save. Before your paycheck hits your checking account in a way that your brain registers as available money, a predetermined percentage of it moves automatically into your investment account. You do not decide each month whether you can afford to invest. You decided once you set it up, and then you remove the decision entirely from your monthly emotional landscape. This is not a minor convenience. This is one of the most powerful wealth-building mechanisms available to ordinary people, and the majority of ordinary people are not using it. The second piece of the system is a pre-committed behavioral plan for market downturns. You do not decide how you will react to a 40% market drop while the market is dropping 40%. You decide right now, today, calmly and rationally what a major correction means for your long-term plan. You write it down, you tell someone you trust, you build the rule before the storm arrives. Because the moment the storm hits, fear is loud and logic is quiet, and the rule's the only thing standing between you and a catastrophically expensive emotional decision. The third piece is redefining what winning looks like. And this might be the most important mindset shift in this entire video. You live in a world engineered to make you compare your financial life to other people's visible financial lives. Social media, neighborhoods, dinner party conversations, all of it is a curated display of spending, not wealth. The car in the driveway, the vacation on Instagram, the kitchen renovation, these are the visible signals of money being spent, not money being built. I have personally known people who look by every external measure like they are crushing it financially. And I have seen the interior of their actual situation. The debt, the anxiety, the retirement account that looks nothing like it should for someone their age. And I have known the opposite. People who drive older cars, take modest vacations, live in houses smaller than they could technically afford, and sit on the kind of quiet, compounding, growing wealth that will give them and their children genuine freedom. The flashy version and the real version are almost never the same. So measure your financial progress by your savings rate, not your income, by your net worth trajectory, not your account balance on any given Tuesday, by whether you are still in the game, still contributing, still growing, still patient, not by whether your portfolio looks impressive at a cocktail party, because the investors who actually end up where they want to be are not, by and large, the smartest people in the room. They're not the ones who found the best stocks or predicted the turns in the market. They are the ones who refused to let short-term emotion interrupt long-term compounding, who understood that time, more than talent, more than intelligence, more than any single financial decision, is the most powerful engine of wealth that has ever existed. I'm going to close with a direct challenge because that is what this moment requires. You just heard 4 specific, concrete, measurable forces that are working against your financial future right now. Lifestyle inflation, eating your raises, loss aversion, costing you your recovery, fees draining your compounding silently, and the story you are telling yourself, keeping you disengaged from the one financial life you actually have. You do not have to fix all 4 of them this week. Trying to overhaul everything at once is how people end up doing nothing. But I want you to do one thing before you go to sleep tonight. Go back through those 4 and identify the one that made you the most uncomfortable. Not the one that was the most interesting, the one that stung, the one you wanted to skip past or argue with or dismiss. That discomfort is diagnostic. It is telling you exactly where to look. Go there, open the account, run the number, face the story, take one concrete step, just one, and then build from there. Because the people who build lasting financial lives do not do it in dramatic transformations. They do it the same way wealth itself is built. Quietly, consistently, one compounding decision at a time. The day will come when you sit down with your numbers and the math looks different. Not because you got lucky, not because the market was kind, but because you chose repeatedly when it would have been far easier not to stay in the game, face the truth, and refuse to be average. That choice is available to you right now. Make it.